Yo, so basically today I'm going to be doing like a full Doom tips guide, and you know, I'm not going to really go into too much of the basics because I assume if you're watching this video then you've probably already got a pretty good understanding of like how to play Doom, but I'm going to go into more detail on like certain techs that maybe you really haven't like understood fully, and other positioning and awareness details that you need to know in order to play at a higher level, because I've seen a lot of these Doom videos, these Doom tech guides, and they're not actually like high ranked. They're just regular Doom tips that anybody can pick up, but I'm going to be explaining it from my perspective. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, just leave me a comment, tell me if you liked it, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first sort of topic I'm going to go over is basically just how to, start your games off, because I see a lot of new Doom players and even good Doom players. They start off their games a little too aggressive, and it costs them a fight win usually, because they'll either die and feed, or, they'll just have to commit so many resources onto themselves from their healers that the other people don't get anything. And I'll explain using a clip, basically just like what you should do in certain situations and why it's good to play a little slower at the start of the match. So starting off this fight here, I noticed that Sojourn, she looks like she's about to walk up that top left staircase, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna slam on her and isolate her just because I don't really see anybody else. The monkey's in front of me and nobody else looks like they're just going behind him, but my Tracer actually ends up going on her first before I do and dies immediately. So now that the game is in a 4v5 situation, I can't really do a whole lot. Like, yeah, I could try and get aggressive, but I see two of them right now, and I know that if I try and go in right now, I'm not going to be able to get either of them. So I have to play this fight pretty slow. So what I end up doing is I see them all grouped up, I hear them, and I slam on them to get a bunch of damage, and I also get a bunch of shields. So I hold block now and walk behind this ledge just because I get my power block, and I also can walk to safety since I know that Ana doesn't have sleep anymore because I just heard her use it. So I walk to safety to get healed, but I don't need any healing right now just because I got all that shields from slam, and I still hear them all up there, so I'm going to slam on them again, get a bunch more damage, get a bunch more shields, and I would have liked to save that power punch for, a better angle against the wall, but it's really awkward when you're jumping up to that ledge, so I only get like 2 of them and don't really get any picks out of it, but I walk back down to safety just in case and play this fight pretty slow. But I'm thinking as soon as I get my slam back, I'm gonna jump back right on them, get a bunch more damage, get a bunch more shields, and the reason this is so effective is because it costs them resources. They have to dump resources into themselves to heal every one of the people that I slammed, and every time I slam I get shields, and look at my ult charge too. Slamming in like that against like 5 of them just gives you so much ult charge, it gives you shields, and it wastes their resources. So that's super important that you don't try and go for an early giants punch right off the bat. Like, some fights can be won super easily just by playing slow and repeating the same thing over and over, just because it doesn't look like they're going in, and they're all grouped up, so there's nobody isolated I can go for. So I just have to keep slamming in and wait for my teammates to either get a pick or whittle them down so that the resources are all wasted. So to start off this fight, I immediately noticed they have a Kree with a Mercy Pocket, and I know as a Doomfist player, this is one of the scariest combinations you can ever come across in Overwatch, just because they have the Hinder and they do a lot of damage if you get caught in the open. So I know I'm going to have to play this fight extremely slow, or else I'm going to die and I'm going to get 0 value out of this team fight. So I walk behind this corner, break LOS, and the Lucio boops me into the open, and I hear they also have a Sombra, so I know I immediately have to get out of there. And luckily I just barely punch out before I get hacked, so I hide behind the wall and get heals from my teammates, break the LOS, get my power punch. But even with my power punch, I know I can't really do a whole lot with it, just because if I ever try and go in and punch someone, I'm going to get hacked, I'm going to get hindered, I'm going to blow up immediately. So I have to sort of just rely on my teammates a lot for this fight, just because I can't do a whole lot, Their comp just makes it impossible. But what I did there is I slam in and I try and bait out the hinder button or the hack, just because if I slam in and punch out right away, then they're not going to be able to get me with either of those abilities. It's just a little too hard to react in time, so that's what I try and do there. And I also get a little bit of damage and some ult charge. But see the queen there, she's about to axe my teammates, and I get hacked again. It's really awkward. I also get hindered, and this is a really awkward fight, but the queen ends up actually dying there. So now this is basically a guaranteed fight win as long as I make sure that that Mercy doesn't res. And of course, people in this game are really dumb, so the Mercy immediately goes for the res, so I just have to cancel it with my punch, and now the fight is basically won, and I didn't really have to do a whole lot. I just had to play my life and wait for my teammates to really do most of the hard work, just because as Doom you can't do a whole lot against that comp. Why it's super important to take aggression on yourself, but also when to take aggression on yourself, because a lot of Doomfist players don't know when to take aggression on themselves, and they'll end up just going in basically 1v5 and feed and not really create space. They just pretty much make it super difficult for their supports to deal, like try and help them out. But there's a lot of different situations where this is super helpful. Like maybe if your support gets caught out in the open, or someone else gets, they're against 1v5, and you need to just basically help them out and get in front, so that, because you're a tank, right? You can take a lot more damage than your team. So if you're not getting in front of them and body blocking, or just making sure that the opponents are looking at you instead of your teammates, then you're not really playing Doomfist right. So you always have to be aware of that. So in this situation here, someone just got sniped by their Widow, so now it's a 3v5 because our other support is still coming from spawn, and actually my Torb gets sniped by their Widow. So what I'm going to end up doing here is going to be really hard to recontest, but I'm going to try and go on their Widow by super slamming, because I assume she's over on this ledge, but she's actually on card for some reason, which is a little awkward, but it doesn't really matter because I still end up making a lot of space and taking their attention onto me. And what it does is it allows my Alari over there to get less attention onto her, so she can kind of walk out a little bit. But I'm just gonna sit here around this rock here until my teammates can like get a little more time to get back. But I need to recontest at some point, so bait the Doom in by blocking and then just slamming back to cart. So now he's out of position, and he's also down a cooldown, so it's a little awkward for him. Sitting on cart, just waiting for my healers to heal me. Try and isolate these people by punching them in a corner. I have to ult because I need to get back on cart, and we end up actually making a really good play, and we somehow take the win there, which is pretty lucky for us. So the next sort of topic I'm going to be covering is basically just a mechanic, and it's super useful in a lot of different situations, and I'm actually surprised a lot more people don't talk about it, because it's especially helpful in higher ranked play when people are strafe spamming just like this, and you can't really get guaranteed damage on someone as Doomfist when they're strafe spamming, just because he's a projectile, and it's almost impossible to predict their movements when they're strafe spamming quicker. So a way I like to counter this is something I like to call a small punch, and what it is all you have to do is hold punch for barely any amount of time, barely any power, and then you just shoot right after. And it basically guarantees a third of their health as long as you shoot right at them, right down the pipe. So basically, I'm just going to come up to this guy, and he's strafe spamming on me quite a bit, so it's going to be a little awkward to get damage on him. So all I have to do is punch him, and then immediately shoot right after. And the reason you want to do a small punch is because if you do a big punch, then you punch him away, and you don't really get any damage on him. And you also push him either towards their healers. This is only good punching far away if you're trying to punch them into your team, but that's not always helpful because you waste 2 cooldowns, and then you also are usually setting yourself back against their entire rest of the team. So I like to do a small punch, especially if they're in an open area like this. Just do a small punch and then shoot immediately after, and it guarantees quite a bit of damage. And this mechanic is especially useful if they're against the wall, because then you can pretty much guarantee yourself 2 shots instead of just 1, because if they get hit against a wall, they get stunned for a little bit longer, and you can almost guarantee yourself 2 shots if you do it correctly. So if they're far away, you can just like slam, punch, and immediately shoot right after and get a bunch of damage. He didn't even hit the wall there, and you can see I still did a bunch of damage like that. But I'll show a couple clips just to basically show you some like in-game demonstrations of it being performed. So now I'm going to quickly go over why it's almost always good to peel for your backline, and the simple reason is just because Doomfist has so much mobility. You can get punch back and help your teammate get that extra source of damage to get rid of that flanker right away, and then you can just punch or slam back to get back to your front line so that they're not overthrowing you from there. So I get that Genji pretty low, but he gets back to his healer. So what I end up doing here is I end up setting up high ground here because it's a lot easier to see where everybody is. And if somebody isolates themselves, then I can just jump on them immediately. So what ends up happening is that Genji ends up dashing directly into my healers, and there's 2 other people with me. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to immediately jump on him and try and make sure that it doesn't get a pick, because if he does, then he'll be able to dash out and he gets away with a free pick. So jump on him, hit that pole there. It's a little unfortunate. And the reason Doom is so good to peel back for is because when there's flank characters like Genji or Tracer or someone else like that, then you can just punch them away from your team, and then they immediately can't do any more damage because they need to get damage at very close range. So if you just punch them away, then it makes it super easy for your supports to deal with them from there. So here are the Doom ults, so I slam away, and I don't really have cooldowns to go on him right now, so I just have to sort of kill their backline for now, just because he's on my backline. But as soon as I get my slam back, I just jump on him because I know he's trying to go for my Ana. I help her out, get in his way so he can't shoot her, and we end up taking him out. So another quick useful tip is whenever you come across a Doom v Doom battle and you're sort of in close quarters, but you guys can both get away like pretty quickly, it's almost always best to never really use your cooldowns on him until he gets low or you get low. It's best to just save him and just keep shooting at him, or let your teammates keep shooting at him, because you'll see in a second why it's so useful. So my teammates get a lot of damage on him, and he's forced to use his block, so I immediately just punch him out of it. And since he's already so low HP, he's not going to get away in time before he dies, which is super useful. If I ended up punching, then I wouldn't be able to cancel it like that, but he ended up punching, and he also was forced to use his block, so I just canceled it, and then he could only slam away, which made it awkward since I put him in a situation where his slam wouldn't really work very well. So now I'm going to go over basically when you have ults, you can get a lot more aggressive than if you don't, but there's some downsides because you have to be aware of the enemy team comp, and I'll show you in a couple clips basically what I mean by that. But you basically can get so much more aggressive using more cooldowns. You can go for something fancy like a slam into punch, and those are really only good if you have ult, because if you don't, then you're just going to send yourself into pretty much a guaranteed death if you don't end up killing at least like 3, because you waste 2 cooldowns and it's super risky because now you can't get out. So the ult is obviously a get out of jail free card, and you should always get aggressive pretty much when you have ult. So what I end up doing here is I see the Mercy over there. She flies up to the top, and the Ashe actually ends up dying. So I'm thinking I'll just jump on this Ana, and it's going to make it a little awkward so that their teammates don't get healed, because either the Mercy has to come help the Ana, or I can just go on her for free and jump on her, and I immediately punch because I know as soon as she sees me in her face, she's going to immediately sleep. So I just punch her, and the game's a little glitchy sometimes, so even if you hear it, she still has it in her cooldowns, so you basically aren't always safe even if you hear that the sleep cooldown went off. But I end up ulting here as well just to make sure that she dies, because I don't have any cooldowns left, and the Mercy doesn't end up helping, so we're able to clean this fight up. In this situation here, I get slept, so I know that the Ana doesn't have her sleep cooldown anymore, so I'm thinking I still have my ult, so I can get aggressive and try and take out their Ana, and I actually do. And I would have taken out this Mercy if I had a little extra time, but this Sombra ends up hacking me, and this is why you have to be aware of what the enemy team comp is, because you never know if there's like a sneaky Sombra or a Creed that are going to make it so you can't use your ult right away and get out. I'm going to quickly go over something I like to call block baiting, and it's basically just holding out your block and then slamming away, punching away, or ulting away, some variation of that, and it's very niche, that's why I'm not really going to go over it too much, but I'll basically show some clips why it's good. It's good against Reinhardt or Doomfist, because if they pin in or try and punch you, then you can just slam away and then puts them out of position. Next sort of thing I'm going to go over here is something called pre-punching, and there's a lot of different reasons why it's so useful, but I'm just going to show you quickly what it is. Basically, if you're behind a wall or something, you can charge up your punch to full power without getting shot, and then as soon as you're ready to punch, you step aside from the wall and then punch. And it's especially useful if you have your power punch, because then you can stun them for a super long time and basically guarantee yourself a kill. I'll go over a couple reasons like why this is so useful. Number one, while you're charging your punch, you can't get shot. Number two, the opponents can't really hear it as well as if you're just standing out in the open, and they also can't see you, so it kind of catches them off surprise, especially if they're not paying attention and tracking where you are at all times. So now I'll show a couple clips of it being used. Now I'm going to talk about taking flanks with your power punch, and this is super useful but also very map situational, because a lot of the maps will have a super long path in order to get to the backline, and if you get seen or if you take too much time, then your team might get absolutely dominated in the front line. So you got to be aware of that when you're doing this. And this is super useful because you can basically get onto their supports for free, and you'll still have your slam cooldown in order to get out if it ever gets south. So the last sort of topic I want to touch on is basically taking duels outside of main, and this is almost universally always a good idea, because when they're isolated like this, they don't have their healers, because usually they're all going to be main, and this guy's a perfect example. Unfortunately, he's on my team, but let's just say he was on the other team for this situation. If I hurt him, I'm immediately jumping over here and I'm going to try and take him out, because I know that his healers are not going to be able to heal him. If he's outside of main trying to take a flank angle or doing something over here, I can 1v1 him, and it's especially good because if it starts going south, then I can just get away pretty quickly because I have a lot of movement abilities, and unless it's like a tracer where she can chase me down really easily, I'm pretty much going to always be able to get away. So most of the time, you're just going to want to be able to attack these people who are just taking flanks and doing something outside of the main area. But anyways, that's going to be it for the video. I plan on making a Doom tips guide against every character in Overwatch, but I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks on a work trip, so you have to bear with me. Regardless, I appreciate each and every one who supports this content and wants to see more, because it's always amazing to see all the people who can get some sort of value from my explanations, can learn something from my videos. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Peace.